You seem to think that if a general or admiral was promoted during a Democratic administration, that person should be automatically fired. That's just a political purge and a pretty standard move for a dictatorship. View every four-star appointed by Biden and thank many for their service before firing them. Mr. Tata, what evaluations did you do for each of the dozens of four-star generals and admirals to convince you that each of them needed to be fired? You want to say you want to fire everybody. I've got your tweet here.
I don't want to fire anybody.
You think they gave controversial statements? I'm sorry, it says before firing them. Our military is strong because each member pledges loyalty to the Constitution, not to a specific president or a political party. And in return, military service and promotion are not tied to a political party or personal loyalty. President Trump threatens that political neutrality with no explanation. He has fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the chief of naval operations. Secretary Hegseth has purged top military lawyers and called for removing, quote, woke generals. Former defense secretaries have called this a, quote, new political standard for military service. So, Mr. Tata, if confirmed, you would be the defense secretary's principal advisor on personnel matters. You've already made your views clear. On November 2024, you posted on X that a, quote, must do, close quote, for the Trump administration will be to, quote, review every four-star appointed by Biden and thank many for their service before firing them. Mr. Tata, what evaluations did you do for each of the dozens of four-star generals and admirals to convince you that each of them needed to be fired?
Senator, that comment was in response to a CNN article that had credible sources that several admirals and generals were having discussions on how to resist lawful orders from the president usurping his Article II constitutional authority as commander-in-chief, which I find unacceptable. I think we can all agree that the Constitution of the United States that we swear an oath of office to, that I have done for many times in my career, is the ultimate penultimate document that we support and that we swear an allegiance to. And so if there were people that were having those conversations, if there were admirals and generals that were having those conversations.
Mr. Tata, I have your tweet here, and your tweet doesn't say, I want to investigate person by person and see what they've done. I also want to make clear that when generals are having conversations about what to do if they receive illegal orders so that they can still follow their obligations under the Constitution of the United States, then they are following the law. They are not breaking the law. But let's go on to what else you have said.
Senator, if I might, the article said controversial, did not say illegal. And so controversial is very subject to interpretation.
I just want to clarify here. You want to say, you want to fire everybody. I've got your tweet here.
I don't want to fire anybody,
you think
Senator.
They gave controversial statements? I'm sorry, it says before firing them. Mr. Chairman, could I enter this into the record, please? Mr. Tata's tweet.
Is there objection? There being no objection, it is
All right,
so admitted.
Let me try another one. On November 2024, you posted on X that the Trump administration should choose only leaders who are, quote, all oars in the water to achieve Trump Agenda 47. That suggests that you believe that generals should be picked for loyalty to Donald Trump. Is that right? Is that what you believe?
That is not what I believe, Senator.
Then why did you post this?
Well, I was a private citizen when I posted that, and
So when you were a private citizen, you said things you didn't believe?
As
Still are a private
Agenda
citizen
47,
right now, Mr. Tata.
Senator, let him answer the question.
Senator, I'm respectfully trying to answer your question. Agenda 47 talks about shipbuilding. It talks about reducing the wars that we engage in. And so as a leader, I support the idea, I support the president's vision that he had in Agenda 47, though, from a foreign policy perspective, and that's what I was referring to.
That is not what this tweet says. Mr. Chairman, may I enter this tweet into the record?
Without objection.
In January 2025, just 4 months ago, Mr. Tata, you posted on X that planning for President Trump's inauguration should, your word, assume that the National Guard and DoD are, quote, compromised at a minimum by hatred of the incoming administration. What information did you have about each member of the Guard and DoD that caused you not only to draw this conclusion, but to put it out there in public?
Senator, I had no information that
So
informed.
you just said it about our Guard. You know, competence is based on the experience and performance of a military leader. Evidently, you have no information individually about the generals, the admirals, and the members of our National Guard and DoD who serve this country, and yet you're willing to say that they all need to be fired or treated as traitors. You seem to think that if a general or admiral was promoted during a Democratic administration, that person should be automatically fired. That's just a political purge and a pretty standard move for a dictatorship. I think it disqualifies you for this office.
More than 2 months after this contentious confirmation hearing, on July 15, 2025, the United States Senate voted 52 to 46 to confirm Anthony J. Tata as Undersecretary of Defense for Personnel and Readiness despite the sharp criticism raised during his confirmation process. 3 days later, on July 18, 2025, Tata was officially sworn into office and assumed responsibility for one of the Pentagon's largest management portfolios, overseeing military and civilian personnel policy, force readiness, health affairs, National Guard and Reserve affairs, education and training, and quality of life programs affecting millions of service members, civilian employees, and their families. Before the Senate voted, Tata's nomination remained highly controversial. On June 2, 2025, Human Rights First and dozens of civil rights, veterans, and advocacy organizations sent a joint letter to Senate leaders urging them to reject his confirmation. The groups cited Tata's previous public statements and argued that his past rhetoric made him unsuitable to oversee the Defense Department's personnel policies. Despite those objections, the Senate ultimately confirmed his nomination, allowing him to take office. Those developments explain why Senator Elizabeth Warren spent nearly her entire questioning period examining Anthony Tata's past public statements instead of his military resume. Warren argued that America's armed forces remain strong because military officers swear loyalty to the Constitution rather than to any president or political party. She warned that recent personnel changes at the Pentagon, combined with Tata's own social media posts, raised serious concerns about preserving that tradition of political neutrality. Warren first focused on a November 2024 post in which Tata wrote that a Trump administration should review every four-star officer appointed during the Biden administration and thank many for their service before firing them. She repeatedly asked what evidence he had gathered about each general or admiral before recommending such sweeping action. Tata responded that his comments were made after reports claiming some senior military leaders had discussed resisting lawful presidential orders. He argued that any effort by military officers to resist lawful orders from the commander-in-chief would represent a serious constitutional problem. Warren strongly disagreed with that explanation. She pointed out that military leaders have an obligation to refuse unlawful orders and argued that discussing hypothetical constitutional situations is not the same as plotting resistance to lawful authority. She also noted that Tata's original social media post did not call for an individual review of officers, but instead broadly suggested dismissing many senior leaders appointed during the previous administration. The senator then introduced another post in which Tata wrote that future military leaders should be all oars in the water, supporting President Trump's Agenda 47. Warren argued that the statement suggested military promotions should depend upon loyalty to President Trump rather than loyalty to the Constitution. Tata rejected that interpretation. He testified that he was referring to support for the administration's national security agenda, including military readiness, shipbuilding, and force modernization, not personal political loyalty. The exchange became even more heated when Warren cited another post suggesting that planners should assume portions of the National Guard and Department of Defense were compromised before President Trump's inauguration. When asked what evidence supported that claim, Tata acknowledged that he possessed no specific information about individual service members. Warren argued that making such accusations without evidence unfairly questioned the integrity of military personnel who had faithfully served the country. The hearing reached its sharpest moment when Warren accused Tata of advocating what she described as a political purge of military leadership. She argued that automatically targeting officers based on the administration under which they were promoted would undermine the military's long-standing tradition of remaining above partisan politics. Tata rejected that characterization, insisting his concern was preserving civilian control of the military and ensuring that lawful presidential orders are carried out. It is important to distinguish between the political arguments made during this confirmation hearing and the Senate's constitutional role in evaluating nominees. Senator Warren argued that Tata's past statements demonstrated poor judgment and raised legitimate concerns about how he would oversee military personnel. Tata maintained that his comments had been misunderstood and that his commitment remained to the Constitution, civilian control of the military, and effective national defense. The hearing itself did not establish misconduct or determine future Pentagon policy. It was part of the Senate's advice and consent process. Ultimately, the outcome of this hearing is now clear. Despite the intense questioning from Senator Warren and opposition from outside advocacy organizations, Anthony Tata was confirmed by the Senate and now serves as the Defense Department's senior official responsible for personnel and readiness. His confirmation ensured that the debate raised during this hearing over political neutrality, civilian control of the military, and the standards expected of senior Pentagon leaders continued well beyond the committee room and remains part of the broader national discussion about the future leadership of America's armed forces.